You can't prove a negative. Have you ever heard this little bit of logic? I hope you have. We've been talking about it for like a year and a half on the channel in various forms when I talk about positive claims and that sort of stuff. But I realized I hadn't made a video like on this super specific idea that you can't prove a negative. I did make a video quite a while back that probably none of you have ever watched called What is Truth? That was part of this failed video series called Everyday Skeptic on, providing some tools for understanding truth for everyone. That was the motive behind it. Since then, I've talked a lot about positive claims, but let's dig into this little statement. You can't prove a negative. This is some people will call this like a piece of folk logic or something like that. The question is, can you prove a negative? And the answer is actually yes, and I will show you how you can do that. But the methodology through which you prove negatives kind of makes the negative statement a bit moot. So I want to kind of display that. But before I dig into that, let's just take the statement as it is. You can't prove a negative. Somebody pointed this out, is like, you can't prove a negative. Isn't that a logical fallacy? If you say you can't prove a negative, isn't that a fallacy because it's not a positive claim itself? Which is a bit like saying, language is meaningless. Language has no meaning. And you're using language to convey it. Thus, using the medium that proves your point wrong. So if you attack this idea, you can't prove a negative is a negative claim, and therefore can't be true because you can't prove a negative. It's like a serpent eating its own tail. The methodology you're using to attack it has that as part of its methodology. Sort of, it's one of those paradoxical statements. However, the reality is we're really stating it incorrectly. When we say you can't prove a negative, what we really mean is you can only prove positive claims. And that's really what I want to dig into. So it's just a way that it's stated is not really formally correct. It's not that it's an incorrect idea. It's that it's usually not stated formally correctly. But I want to dig into it a little bit. And so if you make a negative statement or a negative claim, if you make a claim for the non-existence of something, that something is not rather than something that something is, can you prove that? And the answer is yes. The way that you prove it, there's two ways that you prove it. And one way is by not proving it, and the other way is by proving something else. So if you're not proving it, what you're basically saying is, you're going to show that there's no evidence for whatever the claim is. So if you want to make a claim of anything, you would just show that there's not evidence for the positive version of that claim. So if you want to say Donald Trump is not a reptile, you just say there's no evidence he's a reptile. Bam. The other way, methodologically, that you prove a negative is by proving an incompatible positive, but proving that there's something else over here that does exist, which is incompatible with this other thing, making it not exist, making it untrue or false. So if we say Donald Trump is not a reptile, first of all, we could state that as a positive claim. Donald Trump is a reptile. False. The reason he's not a reptile is he's a human. And if we're going to kind of put that in a logical sequence, it'd be Donald Trump is a human. Humans and reptiles are different creatures. Therefore, Donald Trump is not a reptile. You've proved that he isn't something. The thing is, when you use that methodology to go through it, what you end up realizing at the end of that is that the point ends up being kind of moot. And I'll explain this in just a second. Negative claims aren't really useful because what we care about is what things are, not what they're not. If Donald Trump's a human, obviously that would exclude any possibility of him being something that isn't human. He's not a rock. He's not a tree. He's not a squirrel running across the ground. He's a human being. And the fact that he's not a reptile is just like one possibility eliminated against many. And when would you actually want to prove a negative? Well, if you were in a debate with someone that was saying, Donald Trump is a reptilian, he's a reptile, he's a lizard. When you say, well, humans and lizards are different, Donald Trump is a human, therefore, you're wrong. What you're really doing is proving that his positive claim is wrong through those two methodologies. So the methodology reveals that you really aren't dealing with negatives at all. You're not proving negatives, you're proving positives, or you're showing that there's not any proof for a positive. And that's the way that you actually do it. So you still are not actually proving a negative, but you can prove a negative by proving that incompatible condition. Now, the other thing is, I said they're moot. Let me give you another example, and I think use this one today. If I say the earth is flat, a lot of people will say, okay, there's a negative, that's an easy one to prove. And so clearly you can prove a negative. But if we just kind of extract the statement from the context that we know it in, of like the earth is flat. If we all know that there's people who are trying to claim the earth is flat, and we know that the earth is a sphere. But if we take that out of context, we just say the earth is not flat. Well, then what shape is it? That doesn't tell us anything about reality other than eliminating one possibility among an infinite number. So it's essentially moot or useless because it only extracts a tiny like speck of sand from infinity. Because it could be any shape if it's not flat. There's millions of shapes that aren't flat. It could be a ring world, right? We could be on a dodecahedron. We could be rolling around on a cosmic D20. There's a million different shapes. We could be on some kind of weird Mobius loop. It could be like Aeon, where it's like the inside of one globe and the inside of another globe, and we're inside this globe, and there's Balar on that side, and you know, dragons are going to invade. Whatever shape of the world you want to come up with. So saying that the Earth is not flat isn't useful. What is useful is that the Earth is round. And so we prove that the Earth is not flat by saying the Earth is round, and roundness is not flatness. So those two things go together. Therefore, the Earth is not flat. So what we really care about is that the Earth is round. It just doesn't give us any kind of use to know that something isn't something. We really want to know what it is, what it isn't. And that's really what I want to get across with this, like, you can't prove the negative sort of stuff. You can prove a negative, but in most cases, you're going to do it, when you're going to do it in a valid way, it's going to be to disprove, you're probably trying to disprove a positive claim. So it's really just like a pointing out of like a formal reality. You know, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. It has to do with sort of like the formal statements. Formal statements are important, though, because if you avoid sort of formal fallacies or pointing out formal fallacies, you can end up in a debate where, like, you're having to disprove infinite possibilities for someone. If they're like, you know, hey, you know, it's like, okay, the Earth, you know, how do I know the Earth is round? Well, it's night here and it's day in China. And they're like, well, the sun goes around the flat Earth like this. That's how it could be doing this. It could be, you don't know, it could be doing that. It's like, I know. You're just like, okay, well, let me eliminate that possibility. Let me eliminate that possibility. It's like, can't we just focus on the positive? The Earth is round. Here's photographs of the Earth from space. You can see the curvature of the Earth out of an airplane. You know, there's all these other ways that you can see that the Earth is round. So you just focus on proving that it's round. You don't have to worry about disproving any of the millions of possibilities of how the Earth could work if it were flat, right? And that's what I really want to get across. So hopefully that's been useful and entertaining for you guys. Long time coming on that subject. Give me your thoughts down below. Give me some good examples down below as well. I always appreciate those, and I always appreciate the conversations we have here. I hope you guys will have a great day, and I will see you next time. Oh yeah, if you want to support the channel, you can buy my books. They're linked down below. Muramasa Blood Drinker. I have a new one coming out this summer. It's going to be called Water of Awakening. It's going to be a classic heroic fantasy type novel. So if you're into classic fantasy and into epic fantasy, hopefully you will like it. I've been working hard on it. I'm pretty excited to bring it to you guys. See you next time.